Hello, and welcome to the No More Trauma podcast in the virtual studio. I am your host, Tanya. I am a certified clinical yoga therapist, instructor, Pilates instructor, and wellness facilitator. My mission is to provide healing, mental health tips, education, and inspiration for living a trauma free lifestyle. You can find this podcast on Apple, SoundCloud, as well as YouTube. Now, this special series, I wanted to provide a visual touch because it's going to be juicy. The purpose of the yoga therapy series is gathering medical diagnoses and challenges and applying a yogic perspective, wellness options, and inspiration for achieving a goal of healing and vitality. Now, the information I offer on this podcast and in this series is based on my life as a student and teaching experience as a certified coach, yoga, and wellness professional. This is a special series. If you know all of my episodes, you've really just been able to hear me on the podcast itself, SoundCloud, Apple, YouTube, as I mentioned, the other platforms. However, this series is going to be so good. I wanted to bring a visual presence. And so what is this series, Tanya? It's a clinical yoga therapy for pop culture, reality TV, and celebrity criminal cases, where we're discussing public individuals on the yoga mat for mental, emotional, and physical spiritual recovery. So if you're listening and you're probably saying, Tanya, I haven't, this is my first time tuning in, well, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. So you may be saying, well, I'm not quite certain of clinical yoga therapy and what that is. Well, clinical yoga therapy offers a holistic approach. It's using therapeutic practices such as pranayama, meditation, asana, as well as the Yoga Sutras to help an individual for overall healing. And that's just to name a few. So who are we talking about today? Ooh, I am excited. Well, let me take a sip. Today's client, we're inviting on the mat to discuss, well, if we were working with him one-on-one, right? So today's client is none other than Sean P. Diddy Combs, 55 years old, music entertainer, producer, executive, father of 5 kids, and long-term partnership of the late Kim Porter. Other high-profile relationships, one that actually included a public aired video consisting of physical abuse in the hallway of a hotel. Client is facing multiple lawsuits and indictment of allegations of sex trafficking, racketeering, physical harm, as well as blackmail, just looking at my notes here, physical abuse and power, and inflicted harm. So now that we know about our client, we want to take a look deeper. What happens when they come onto the yoga mat? And when I'm working with the client, the first thing I like to ask is, what is your intention with yoga therapy? Why do you want to indulge in this practice? How can it benefit you? And so what I did is I wanted to create his sankalpa, right? Based off of his apology video, okay? So before I mention the sankalpa, the intention of why he would come to the mat, why he would come to the mat for his healing, okay? I wanted to look at that apology video. So let's go there before we go into the sankalpa, okay? So what I do is I gather information. So during that intake session, we're gathering information about the client in order to work with the client, see where they are and what their goals are for yoga therapy. Okay, so in that intake and in that video, it says the client expresses disgust that he effed up and being in his darkest moments. He explains that he had sought out professional help, which is good, rehab, and the mercy and grace from God. Combs shares that he is committed to being a better man each and every day, that his actions are inexcusable and not asking for forgiveness. This public apology was aired on the social platforms and republished by sources such as CNN, TMZ, and other reputable journalists. So now that we have that information, this background information, what I'm doing in the intake, working with the client, I'm building my notes and I'm gathering data as to how can I be supportive of this client. What I already know is that he has a professional team, which is great, because something of this magnitude, I'll be honest, I will ask the client, are you currently working with someone else? Are you working with a therapist? Are you working with, let's say, if there's diet in there, are you working with an Ayurveda practitioner? I am a certified Ayurveda nutritionist. And so I would ask questions like that. Are you working with a dietitian? Are you working with a podiatrist? Depending on whatever the injury looks like, or if there is mental health concerns, I will start to see where have they already started. Are there any previous diagnoses? And maybe even if they're taking any medications, okay? And so the sankalpa, the intention, again, going back to how can yoga therapy help you? And so let's just say, because we're not working with the client yet, we don't want to assume what their goals are, but in this case, I'm not working with him yet. So seeking balance, selflessness, sobriety, emotional stability, and self-compassion. I find it interesting, and we'll talk about it, it's going to get good, that he says, I'm not asking for an apology, but maybe that self-forgiveness is from himself. Ooh, it's going to be good. Okay, we're going to continue down. So now that we have the sankalpa, and I've completed the intake, and so painting a picture again with that intake, the information that I'm gathering, what is your elimination like, right? How many times are we having urination or bowel movements? What does our diet consist of? Are we eating processed foods, fresh foods? Are we on a plant-based diet, vegan diet? Seafood, raw vegan, keto, low sugar, low carb. I'm gathering all of that information, especially in the Ayurvedic space, right? Because I still want to stay in my scope of work. However, thinking on the Ayurvedic side, it also gives me an idea of his energy levels, right? He's a music entertainer. And so in that case, there may be long hours, right? Are you getting 3 meals a day? Are you getting 2 meals a day? Okay, and so those are some of the questions. Oh, another, sleep patterns, right? How is your sleep impacted? Yoga says that you want to caution these 3 areas: elimination, diet, sleep, right? How is the sleep cycle? What time are you going to sleep? How many hours are you sleeping? Okay, because that always can impact the way that we operate during the day. All right, so we continue. So after that intake, I'm gathering information, I'm doing my research. So a couple things that I'm looking at. So we know that there's substance use, And so, according to medical news today, the physical and mental effects of drug use, short-term impacts consist of lack of coordination, wakefulness, so maybe not getting that much sleep, which can impact the rest of the day, decreased appetite, so may not be getting the foods, proper nutrition, because just because it's quality food or high priced food, it may not be, it could be processed, right? We don't know what that looks like. So just kind of throwing that out there. Increased or irregular heart rate, lightheadedness, increased blood pressure, nausea and vomiting. So it may not be able to keep things down. So redness in skin or appearing flush. Also, if there's nausea and vomiting, there may not be, again, proper nutrition. So those nutrients that the body is asking for, it may not, it's not giving his body what it needs. And again, it's not for me to assume, because as I'm gathering this information, maybe I'll probe a bit, asking the client, what does the diet look like, or what are the impacts that you're experiencing? Okay. And also kind of going back in that apology video, his skin did look flush. That's just my observation, right? Because my job in meeting with clients is to observe. I'm observing posture. I'm observing the prakriti, right? The way, the quality in which you show up. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So with cocaine use, pupils are enlarged, increased in body temperature, erratic and violent behavior, okay? Which we could see in the video of the hotel. So abdominal pain, heart attack, stroke, and headaches. Long-term effects, so challenges with digestion, liver disease, cancer, inflammation in the liver, weakened immune system. Mental effects can be irritability, anxiety upon withdrawal. So I'm gathering all of this information, concentration issues, feelings of euphoria, okay? So not only am I gathering this information during the intake process with Mr. Combs, I start to assess the client, so as we're meeting, so sessions can be anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks. And so each time that we're meeting on the mat, my goal is to observe and assess the client, right? Asking, as we check in, how are we feeling since the last time we met, but however, before I get to that, because remember, I'm talking about the intake, so I'm assessing in that first session, okay? And so before I get to that, I want to say, if you are enjoying this podcast already, if you like what I'm saying and you are dialed in, I ask and invite you, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to monetize this baby YouTube channel. So I ask that you subscribe. I ask that you share this video, share this content with anyone that you think would enjoy this type of content. And let's get the conversations going down in the comments. I would love that. But let's continue on. Okay, so if we're assessing the client, a couple things that I'm starting to look at, as I mentioned, is the daily lifestyle. And so if we think about this client, this client is a music entertainer, and with him being a music entertainer, there can be there may not be consistent days. The days may look different, may have long days and may have short days. As we know, this client may be, indulge in leisure activities. And so fluctuation of long travel, work hours, leisure. possible overconsumption of substance use, right? So because of the substance use, then that means the diet may be off, diet may be impacted, as well as the sleep cycle, okay, as well as the elimination process. That may not even be consistent, okay? And so this may also lead into inconsistency with the spiritual practice. And so what I then want to do is, now that I know this information, I go a little bit deeper and starting to utilize the yogic tools to continue assessing the client. The reason why I'm assessing the client is that I'm wanting not only to get to a place of wholeness, so that sattva, or that sandmahai, that bliss, assisting and guiding the client to that place. We also want to start to pull out the yogic tools and how we can create the clinical yoga therapy treatment plan, right? How are we going to work with this client, right? So again, how is this yoga therapy going to benefit? So a couple things that I'm starting to look at as we get deeper into this assessment is we look at the pranayama, right? So the lung capacity. So I'm maybe assessing the client for the, with the substance use, it can manipulate or hinder the lung capacity due to the substance use. Another thing is I'm looking at his gunas. Tanya, what are the gunas? What is that? So that's Gunas, the gunas. It attributes to the quality or the nature of which a living or non-living thing shows up as, right? So the quality. How is this person showing up? There are 3 gunas, okay? And so the first guna, that's the tamas, and so that energy, it's dark, it's destructive, it's death. We saw that destructive energy in the hotel video, right? And he also shares that in the apology video. He says, oh, I was at a really low point in my life. I hit rock bottom. I believe the exact words he shared was, I was at the darkest time of my life. I hit rock bottom. Okay, so there's that's tamas, and then we have rajas. This is opposite. So this is energy. This is passion. This is birth. We also see a little bit of rajas in his work. We're talking about Sean P. Diddy Combs, Sean John, Ciroc, right? Working in collaborations with other artists, right? And so we also have sattva. This is the place of balance. This is the goodness, the purity, the light, okay? Now, what happens is if a person, right, is in excess of one guna, tamas or rajas, then what we want to do is we want to add in the opposite to slowly build that person into this place of sattva, purity, light, balance. I hope you're following me there. All right, if you have questions, of course, you can always put those down in the comments. So we identified that he's sitting in a space of tamas, at least in that video. It was dark and destructive. Then we also have his posture. In that apology video, we noticed that his head was hanging low. So he's, kind of just like, I was in a really, really dark time in my life, I fucked up, and he kind of looks off to the other side. And so immediately I think of the crown chakra, where there can be guilt, shame. There's also a slight curling of the shoulders, which is protecting the heart. Now, I find that interesting too, because in protecting the heart, it immediately brings me to, as we know, he lost his partner, his long-term partner, the late Kim Porter. And so their grief, right? The heart space, grief is also love. And so, we look at how he's curling the shoulders over again, guilt, shame, protecting this space, right? And so I also look at what else in his posture. That was it for his posture. And so I also look at the yamas and niyamas. So if you practice yoga, yamas and niyamas are the codes of conduct and the disciplines to live a harmonious lifestyle. Now, if you're someone who's just starting the practice of yoga, actually, if you're long term, right? If you're an advanced yoga teacher, clinical yoga therapist, and I love the yamas and niyamas because it's, to me, the foundation. And anytime you get bored in your practice, you can always refer back to the yamas and niyamas. So I'll share a little bit more about that further down. So before we get into yamas and niyamas, I want to talk about the chakra embodies, the chakra bodies. Okay, so the chakra bodies, there are 7 chakras, or chakras. I believe that's how it's really pronounced, chakras. Chakras. And so there are 7, and they sit in the center of the body, attached to those meridians, the nadis, and the energy centers, like even the organs, right? And so whenever you face an imbalance, it kind of helps us know where to work in the body, right? So for example, the heart space, the shoulders, the pectoral muscles, right? The deltoids, traps, kind of tells us where to go. But I want to also talk about each chakra has a archetype, and so let's talk about it. So chakra imbalances, they're energy centers, chakras, energy centers that are associated with the physical and energetic energy centers, and in Sanskrit it means wheel. So when we look at Diddy Combs, we look at the crown chakra, or the Sahasrara, and egoism, narcissism, arrogance, right? When there's imbalances, you can see that egoism, right? Where he's really big in that egoic space, arrogance. Heart chakra, or the Anahata, okay? When this space is balanced, you are the lover. However, when it's imbalanced, you are the actor. And so I find it very interesting that he changed his name to Brotherly Love. And I want to say that in the video, maybe we didn't get that. I'll just say that out loud. Maybe we didn't get the brotherly love, right? Maybe it wasn't quite balanced. Maybe it was the actor. And so inability to form authentic loving bonds and demonstrates power or dominance while hiding the agenda of dark feelings, grief. Because what we also know about Diddy Combs, there has been a lot of death around him, right? We think of, Biggie, we think of the late Kim Porter, we think of other artists that he's worked with. And so, although, I have to go back into my work as a clinical yoga therapist, and I'm not supposed to assume. This isn't a place of assumption. And so when you're working with the client, you are only to take the information that they are providing and working with the client there. And then if a client is working with other professionals, then I can share that information with the mental health professional that he's working with, the therapist, or maybe the nutritionist if he decides to work with one, the rehab center, okay? So just to share that. We're not assuming, but we do know in the world of pop culture, we do know a little bit more information about this particular client. So sacral chakra, right? The Swadhisthana. That's how it's pronounced in Sanskrit. So the sacral chakra, that's right at the navel or a little bit below the navel, and it houses the reproductive organs. And so when balanced, you are the emperor, and when imbalanced, you are the martyr, full of suffering and unable to make changes, right? And he kind of shares that in that apology video. He shares, you know, I was at really dark times in my life. I hit rock bottom, okay? And again, we think of, all of the loss that he's experienced. So I'm just sharing that. And then we also look at the kleshas, okay? So what are the kleshas? Tanya, tell me a little bit more about that. So these are our mental sufferings that prevent us from seeing our true self and experiencing energetic and physical freedom. It can show up as jealousy, greed, and to name the kleshas, you have avidya, which is delusion, right? Or ignorance. We also have raga, which is attachment. We have asmita, which is egoism. Devesha, and I hear Devesha in his apology video, which is repulsion, aversion. And then lastly, we have Avindesha. I can be pronouncing it so not the best, but it's the will to live, and just having fear of living or fear of death. Okay, so those are some of the assessments that I'm doing with the client, right? So as I'm talking with the client during the intake session, I am gathering all of my notes. And if that session is recorded, I'm going back to review some of that information to create my yoga therapy treatment plan. So let's review. Tamas, right? There's some dark energy, right? Destructive behavior. We know that there's substance use, okay? We also know that there is this attachment, right? Attachment to maybe material possessions, people, right? Because we hear trafficking. And so there's this ownership, and then an imbalance of the crown chakra, ego, narcissism, okay? Racketeering. So I'm gathering all of this information and, dominance, sufferings. So as I'm gathering all of this information, I have now been able to create the yoga therapy treatment plan. I'm gonna take a sip. I'm gonna take a sip of my tea because I'm about to disclose a really good, I believe, if you ask me, I believe a really good balanced yoga therapy treatment plan just for this client. Someone's probably saying, oh my gosh, I had no idea yoga included all of this information. It's really good. All right, so weeks 1 and 2, so let's just say I'm working with this client for 6 weeks. I break out my plan by kind of even it out. 2 weeks, we kind of work on something. So first 2 weeks we're working on something, the next 2 weeks we're working on something, and the next 2 weeks we're working on something, because I'm really wanting my client to really embrace these practices and these wisdoms, okay? So the first one is weeks 1 and 2, we're working on saucha, cleanliness, right? We wanted to really clean out all of this mental uncleanliness, physical uncleanliness, right? And the 8 limbs, someone's probably saying, Tanya, what is saucha? And that's S-A-U-C-H-A. In the 8 limbs of yoga, the second niyama. Remember I said I would come back to the yamas and niyamas. So saucha is an inward moral guideline towards enlightenment, okay? This makes us stronger and builds our character. This is not just how we keep our outward body clean, but how we keep the internal body clean. This is the caring for our hygiene, the foods that we eat, right? So even our diet, the internal body, okay? But it's also the things that we watch, okay? It's the things that we hear or that we listen to. But it's also the environments in which we show up, or the company that we keep. Is it clean? Is it pure? Is it bringing us a place of sattva, right? Remember we talked about that purity, balance. Is it bringing us to that place? Okay? And so the reason why I figured this is a great place to start, we go back to the sankalpa, the intention, the goal. And what was the reason for yoga therapy? Sobriety, right? And so substance use is a disorder. It's considered problematic pattern of substance use that affects your health and the quality of your life. And it's treatable, right? And so we will continue in the weeks 1 and 2 with this cleanliness by inviting and adding in hot yoga, hot hatha practice. Hatha is all levels, can be considered in all levels, slower practice, right? Where we're holding those poses for about 5 to 8 breaths, okay? And I chose bringing it in a space of heat to release and remove some of those impurities, okay? Detoxifying the body, standing out in the sun, practicing those yoga postures, or in a space that has heat. We will also, in those first 1 to 2 weeks, we will do a crown chakra guided meditation to release any negative thoughts or beliefs, right? What are the narratives he's saying to himself, right? We talked about that egoism, that narcissism, right? And so we want to purify the mind. We're also going to add in chanting, right? Whoa, what are the benefits of chanting? The beautiful benefit of chanting Om on its own, it actually brings the body back into alignment, right? It's calming, right? Because anxiety, remember, when we did the research, it talked about drug use in a place of withdrawal. Anxiety shows up from the withdrawal of the substance. And so we add in this space of chanting. But even more so, what do we know about Sean Diddy Combs? He's an artist. He's a music artist. And singing, being on the mic, entertaining. And so this is why we bring in the chanting. I figured this way, this may actually stimulate the creative side, the passion, the ragas. Because remember, the opposite of tamas is raga. I'm getting so passionate right now. I have to laugh. I love this word so much. It's so much fun. I love it. Okay. So what we do is we practice Om Pranayama Namaha. 5 breaths, 2 sequence. We inhale, exhale, chanting the Om Am Hadrayam Namaha for 5 breaths. Ooh, so good. Then we give space for the client to actually go in to notice the vibration. Notice the vibration in the tone, the affirming message of the Om chant, right? So really bringing the body back into this place of calm, into this place of homeostasis, if there's sensation of anxiety. My goal as a yoga therapist, my job is to also check in with the client, right? So as we're doing those heated yoga postures, how are you feeling? What did you notice? What are the thoughts that you have attached to these postures, right? Did anything show up? And sometimes what's so beautiful about the yoga practice is that it can bring up other information. Ooh, it's so good. Take a sip. So we look at the homework because I'm not going to let the client go without giving them homework, because this stimulates that svadhyaya, this space of self-study, where we go into deep reflection. I would invite the client to continue chanting Om each day for the following week, and other ways to practice Saucha, right? Because we think of the cleanliness of the tongue. What is it that you say and speak? And is it kind? Is it true? Right? And is it inflicting harm to others or to yourself? So I invite the client to tongue scrape, to remove the impurities off of the tongue. Also, dry brushing, right? So the dry brushes allow us to remove excess, that excess tamas that's making him feel heavy and dark, right? We also know that the skin can be inflamed or it can be flush. And so why are we using that? To target the lymphatic system, right? To get the circulation moving in the body, to pull him out of that space of tamas, right? But not so much of that raga, to bring him to a place of balance. Whew. Okay, are you ready for week 3 and 4? So weeks 3 and 4, sacral chakra, we focus on that space near the reproductive organs, but also the bowl. It's symbolized that the sacral chakra is the bowl. It's the watery emotions. It's the place that holds all of our emotions. And we look at asteya. Asteya is the ethical rule in niyamas, which means non-stealing and avoid stealing from others. What do we know about this client? Trafficking, racketeering, right? Abuse and power, okay? And so it's not having the best intentions and taking away from others. And so in these weeks, we focus on a Dharma discussion to reflect Satya. The Satya. Satya is the truth. What is true here, right? Because when we go back again, we're checking in with the client to see if he was able to do his homework from the previous weeks, but we're also checking in with the client to see what has come up. Is it a narrative? Is it an old thought or belief or pattern that he must possess or own, right? That he was in the darkest times of his life, that he was that he effed up. I don't want them to take this off the podcast, all these curse words. But so we look at that information because we want to get the truth about not only his beliefs, but what is true on the mat. Where is he holding resistance, and what is it that he's avoiding, okay? What is the limitations that he's experiencing spiritually, right? Because he's saying that he's, asking for mercy from God, okay? And then we also have the Aparim Garaha. Oh my goodness, these Sanskrit words get me all the time. And so this is non-greed, non-attachment, and non-possessiveness, which will lead to freedom. So we want to support the client in this space, because remember, when we look at the kleshas, there was raga. He has this attachment over his possessions, right? And so we want to we want to target this area of non-attachment, right? Can you just be? Can you observe, right? Can you observe what it is that it's arising within you when someone leaves? Ooh. What is it that's arising within you when something has reached its expiration date? And what is it that's arising in you that requires you to reach for illegal substances? Ooh. All right, let's continue on. So once we have that Dharma discussion, we begin to go into our practice. And in that practice, it's a 1 hour long tapas, traffic meditation, where you're burning of the flame, right? So we're lighting a candle. And that meditation can consist of us gazing into the flame. And can he put these negative thoughts from the crown into that flame? Or maybe those feelings of suffering, can he offer it up to the flame, but also sit in the space with self, right? With these sufferings, because the sufferings are not him. It's something that he's observing, right? And so my goal is to try to kind of guide the client into that understanding, right? So this is where that meditation for observance and to connect with its higher self and reach a place of calm. But that swadhyaya is to observe the thoughts and the behaviors and the beliefs that he's experiencing, and to also bring him closer to the parts of his self that he may experience control, manipulation, and the desire to cling to his possessions, right? To his relationships, to other people, even his own insecurities, right? And so when we look at possessiveness, right, it's a psychological trait of low self-esteem. So that's why I'm guiding him into this meditation, right? A 1 hour long meditation. And of course, I'll check in with the client to see if they need a break, if they need to shift, right? If we need to do windshield wiper movements with the legs, right? And to shift the body, but to come back to the flame. For his homework, I would suggest that the client create a nature mandala. This can consist of rocks and stones, these elements of dirt and rocks, and to create this beautiful mandala. It takes concentration, the very same thing that it takes to sit in the meditation as you gaze at the flame. I would invite the client to practice this nature mandala. And once he's completed this mandala, to release it back into nature. This will assist the client with the art of letting go, right? How can you release this desire of control? So again, gentle check-in. If you are enjoying this information I'm sharing with you in this podcast, I invite you to subscribe to the No More Trauma Substack. It's my newsletter where I'm giving you and sharing with you information for each month. We just started our newsletter and I'm very excited about it. So take a look in the comments, the description box, and locate that link and subscribe to our newsletter. Carrying on to the final weeks 5 and 6. This is the heart chakra, right? The lover versus the actor. The inability to form authentic loving bonds and demonstrates power or dominance while hiding agenda of dark feelings, okay? This is the self-compassion and the self-forgiveness. Again, he mentions he's not asking for apology from others, but maybe he's asking for it from himself. Maybe he has challenges with trying to get there. So again, when I meet with this client during these weeks, I'm checking in to see, how did that mandala work for you? What were the feelings that came up when you had to release it into the dirt? What do you know about these sensations? Where did you feel it in your body? How has your practice been going? Have you continued working on the mat? How does that feel? How often and how long are you working on the mat? Have you increased your time? Right? I'm tracking the client's progress, and I'm also asking the client, in what ways are you tracking your own progress? How do you feel you are getting towards your sankalpa, your intention for meeting with me on the mat? How am I doing as your clinical yoga therapist? So in this, we focus on ahimsa, nonviolence. It's what you think, act, speak in harmful ways to others or self. And so in our Dharma discussion, in our check-in, as we ground, I'll ask the client, where does he feel? What does he feel about that? In what ways has he been harmed? In what ways do he think he has been harming himself? Chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita, it says, although one must be engrossed with fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop a love for devotional service. Only then can one have the opportunity to get out of bondage of material existence. And so it's saying here, once you devote yourself, devote love and devotion, it brings you to this place of liberation, freedom. And so in this practice, a loving kindness guided meditation of the Anahata focused affirmations. You are a divine, loving being. You deserve unconditional love. I am self-forgiving. I am love. He may call himself brotherly love, right? But is it a place from Satya or Asteya, right? Is it true? And so we practice these heart-opening postures like thread the needle, camel pose, half moon pose, shoulder stretches, and humble warrior. Stimulating the Anahata chakra, the shoulders, right? Because we're opening them up. So remember in the apology video, there was a slight tilting forward, and we want to, open that area, right? Inviting his own self in. I would also suggest and invite the client to write a letter to himself for self-forgiveness. And for homework, I would invite the client for a flower mandala. The softness of the petals, the color of the petals, the passion. And this will support, again, that space of non-attachment. But what's special about this mandala, he gets to leave it for someone else. So that feeling sensation of empathy and compassion and love and kindness, he will hope, these sensations of softness, kindness for himself and for others. I will continue to check in with the clients, seeing how this practice has gone. How has it supported him to his sankalpa? How has it supported him on and off of the mats? How has it supported him in this selflessness, reaching this place of sobriety? I would check in with him and see in what ways have he found balance. I am so glad to have brought this episode. If you enjoyed it, if you are a yoga teacher, a clinical yoga therapist, a student, anywhere in the wellness space, or just a fan of the work, I ask and invite you to leave a comment and let's get the conversations going. I am so excited to have brought this, and I can't say it enough. Subscribe if you haven't already. Save this if you want to come back to it. If you know someone who has struggles of substance abuse, trafficking, inflicted abuse, feel free to, again, dig into this episode. And if you have questions, feel free. If you wish to bring me on as your clinical yoga therapist, you can visit my website at az.nomoretraumayoga.com or send me an email at az.nomoretrauma@gmail.com. You can find all of the information in the description below. I thank you so much for tuning in. This was so much fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Remember to live abundantly, love your authenticity, and radiate organic happiness. But most importantly, live a life of no more trauma. Take care of yourself. Be well. Namaste.